In today's episode from our new location, we're going to 3D print a 3D print. What do I mean? Well, Michael Laws over at the Teaching Tech channel shows how you can set up a printer to actually print in 3D. Meaning the head, as it's laying down a layer, will follow the contour of the 3D print and give you really interesting results. Now it takes a lot to set that up, but fortunately he shares a G-code file ready to print. Well, almost. There's a few setup things you have to do, and I'm going to show you all those steps right here at Filament Friday. This week's Filament Friday is brought to you by these Patreon supporters. I was looking into doing this and there's so many steps, and then I saw that Michael Laws at Teaching Tech went through all the steps and did a great explanation of how he set it up. It's not easy, but then even better, he shares the files. He shares a G-code file so you can just run it, and also an STL file if you want to print it separately. So I'm going to download his G-code file, and then we're going to print that, and then I'm going to take the STL file and print that at a fine detailed layer height to see how they compare. The first thing I need to do is make clearance around the nozzle so it doesn't hit the print as it's going over the contour. And I'm going to use this Ender 3 that has the Hero Me fan duct installed. It's easy to remove the fan duct, and I can stick the fan up here, and then that gives me clearance on both sides for this thing to ride over the top of the print. The next step, I thought I could just run the G-code file, so I clicked on his file that I downloaded. But what I found was there's no preheat in the G-code. It just starts printing right away. So you can see I'm not even up to the 190 degrees that his G-code file is saying. It's not pausing. It just starts trying to print when the nozzle is still cold. So I'm going to have to preheat this thing before I run the G-code. So what I'm going to do is stop the print. Now I'm going to go back to the menu, and I'm going to click on Prepare, and then Preheat PLA, and then Preheat PLA, which will heat both the bed and the nozzle to the default 185 and 45 degrees. Then once it starts printing, then I can go back and adjust it for my filament. So I'm going to go down to Tune, go to Nozzle, set it to 205, which is what I want for my Filament Friday filament, the black color. Then I'll go back, and now you can see that it's 205 and 60 degrees on the bed, and it's going to rise up to that and print normal. Up to this point, it's a normal 3D print, just laying down layer by layer, but if I freeze it here, you can see it's really a crappy print. I've got stringing, I've got flow problems, it's not cooling the PLA properly. Overall, I'd say this is a terrible print. But then it starts the non-planar flow, and it's just following the contour of the 3D print, putting a layer on top of what was a crappy print, and it starts to smooth it right out. And as it goes over the contour, you can see it just flows. It's so amazing to watch because this is not something you normally see in a 3D print. So it's going to cover the whole top layer, and then it's going to turn around and do another layer. First it goes around the outside, following the outer edge, which is just, I don't know, it's just really interesting to watch. And then it starts flowing down the next surface on top of the other one at like 90 degrees. So it just continues this across the print. And then it'll do another layer going the other way. So it's back to where kind of it started. And I think it does a total of 4 layers before it's done. So you get a pretty good surface on this thing on top of what was a very, very lousy print. The first one finished, and the top surface, it's not what I'd call super smooth, but it's definitely got a better look than just the layer by layer look. Now, it depends on the print. You're not going to use this technique to do a benchy all the way across all the different heights, but I could see where the top of the benchy could be much smoother using this technique. And I couldn't really do ironing on this because it's angled. So ironing really works as a flat layer. So that's a plugin in Cura. I did a video on that. So I could see this eventually being a plugin where you could select it as a top layer being this contoured look. And that would be really awesome if we could get that. But, there's obstacles that may be in the way, patents and things like that. And just the steps that Michael had to go through to get this to work. So I don't know how hard it's going to be, but I'd love to see this on future prints as an option in every slicer that's out there. It's a really awesome technique and would make our 3D prints definitely a lot better. Now I wanted to compare it to printing in the normal method with just a finer layer height. And to save time, I'm actually going to lower the print so I'm only getting the top surface. So I'm cheating a little bit there. But I'm going to use a 0.12 layer height from my Magic 0.12 profile. It says it'll take 3 hours and 44 minutes. And when I zoom in, you can see it's smooth towards the top and a little bit rougher towards the bottom. So there may be ways around that, or maybe I could even go to a 0.08 layer height. But here it is actually printed at the 0.12. And I'm actually surprised how smooth this really is. When I run my finger over it, it's really smooth. The top layers, I didn't put enough top layers. That's why you can see the infill. But overall, I'm impressed with how good this printed on my Ender 3. So I was hoping this new method would be smoother than this. And I don't think it is. It just gives you a different look. But a really cool technique, that's for sure. So with a real fine layer height on your printer, you can get really smooth prints with the old-fashioned layer method. But what Michael showed us with the 3D gives us really interesting results and prints a lot faster. So thanks, Michael, for sharing this. I highly recommend you go try this out. This is worth doing just to see your printer print in 3D. It's really amazing. I'll put links to everything in the description below.